Welcome to Callous Coder, and today we will be bidding this torture on Dragster. And we're going to be cheating more than Todd Rogers and Billy Mitchell combined. And that is saying something. Motherfucker! So Todd Rogers has said
You must mean Todd Rogers.
No. It is Rogers. Look at his own indictment against Twin Galaxies. Here.
His solicitors will merely qualify that as a Freudian slip of the pen. So I advise you to stay away, Ray.
Okay. So the high score that Todd Rogers has claimed, 5.51, is a technically impossible score. The fastest that you can get on Dragster is 5.57, and that was proven beyond a shadow of a doubt by OmniGamer. I will now be playing the unmodded version to see how close I can get to 5.57 and figure out how much I need to cheat in order to beat Todd Rogers' 5.51.
Okay, let's do this shit.
Fuck! That thing blows easier than a cheap prostitute in a brothel filled with horny sailors on their payday. Unbelievable. Dear Mr. David Crane, even steam engines in the 1800s had rev limiters. Those were those big metal iron testicles that separated from each other when it spun up. And even my cheap Kia has a rev limiter. So why didn't you put one in? Your game is far too hard to play without it. So I will hack one in, and maybe I can even beat then the 5.57, because technically we can redline all we want. So let's jump in and hack the code.
The first step when reverse engineering a program is to identify the variables and the addresses. This process is made very simple by the Stella emulator, because all the variables that have changed are highlighted in red. So I quickly identified that A8 contains the ref counter, and the player one time are made up from B7, B5 and B3, which are in binary coded decimal. Now I disassemble the game from F000, because that is where ROMs start on the 2600, and I copy this code into VI because it makes analyzing and searching a whole lot easier. Now I will search for A8, the ref counter, and analyze the code. Here I find a piece of code that does the acceleration. It increases by the value of 3, which is stored in memory. And I also saw that during the debugging stage. Here we have the deceleration part, decreasing by a value of 3. And this is where we find the compare with 20. I noticed during debugging that as soon as we went over the value 20 with our ref counter, that we went into the engine blown state. The BCC here stands for branch carry clear, so if we're less than 20 then it's okay. If we're bigger than 20, we blow up the engine. So I figured, let's set the accumulator back to 20 and then add a BCS statement, branch carry set, to that same address where we have the normal state. A BCS has the opcode B0, but we need to find out the number of bytes to jump. In this case, I figured out it was E bytes, 0 E bytes, because we already had 4 bytes spent on the BCC and the LDA. If you wonder if it's a problem to partially override the blown state, then you can be reassured, because we're not going to use that code and the BCS takes care of that. Now we go into the runtime environment and change the code accordingly. We set the LDA to 20, basically setting it to the max ref counter, and then do the BCS to the address where we continue as normally. And I validate that I didn't make any calculation errors with the addresses, and it works.
Oh hell yeah!
I made your game my bitch.
What he said, David Crane. Fuck! I'm so bad at this game that even when I'm cheating, I can't get close to the 5.57.
So it's more than just holding a joystick and tapping it 8 times to the left.
Well, it seems that way. Dodger? But at least I don't send in a Polaroid masking my high score with a coffee stain. So let's fudge with the timekeeping and see if we can beat Todd Rogers then.
I had identified that B7, B5, B3 makes up the time and B7 is the smallest. Since B7 contains the smallest time value, we're going to look for B7 in combination with add carry 3. Now why 3? Because there's 6 frames divided by 2 players for every 100th second. And we're going to change it to 1 to see what happens. Let's go to the runtime environment and change that value 3 to 1 and race and see if this works.
Even Todd Rogers wouldn't dare to send in this high score, right? So let's change it to 2, and that gives me a 30% advantage. And then we will see for real if we finally beat the Roger.
Before making the changes to the ROM, I copy the ROM file and make the changes on the copy. I start Hexcurse, which is a hex editor on Linux. Now we need to find what we're going to look for. So I need to switch back to the changes that we made before, and I identify a string of commands. In this case B5, B5, then the hot steamy 6903. If we were to just look for 6903, because that is what we want to change, then there could be a lot of false positives. We change that to 2, so we now only increment by 0.2 of a second for each player every frame. And now we're going to implement the rev limiter change that prevents us from blowing up the engine. Now we're going to look for the whole string 9012 A90F. Again, to make a unique match. Here we will change A90F to A920, which was to set the rev count back to its maximum value. And then do the branch with B0 to OE. Now I save the file with Ctrl S, and we have made all the changes that we did in the runtime environment. So now we can burn the ROM. This PCB was designed by Joe Krant and available on the PCBWay community website. This is an NTSC game and a PAL monitor. That's why we have these weird colors. Now let's see what we can do. Even with this highly modified game, it turned out to be very difficult to break the score. Especially break the score and looking somewhat realistic.
There you have it, 551 annihilated. Although in all honesty, it was far more work than I had expected. I had to put in a rev limiter because I kept blowing up my engine, and I had to subtract basically 30% of the time because even with a hacked engine, I couldn't get close to the 557. That says more about my ability to play this game. Now Todd Rogers, in defense of him, he did set a 557 many a times during conventions. So I don't know what happened with the 551. Maybe it was misread, registered and misremembered. I really don't know. Whether it was malice or not, I really don't know. And that's not for me to decide. The only thing I do know is that 557 is indeed the fastest that you can get without hacking your own ROM. I hope you liked this episode, and in the next one we will hack the Pac-Man ROMs to get easily to the kill screen. So see you in the next one.